It could be signal here. It could be a lot of different things, you know?
Let's go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marissa Scheinfeld. I am a photographer, author, and founder of the Borscht Historical Marker Project. In August of 2022, this project took flight. It was an attempt to highlight and celebrate the Jewish American imprint on this area. In an academic and a documentative sense, the Borscht Belt is a topic I've worked to shine a light on for almost 14 years. It is also personal because Sullivan County is the place I was raised and the place that I call home. With each passing year, physical traces of the Borscht Belt continue to vanish. This marker is part of a planned trail of 20 that will eventually be linked by a self-guided audio driving tour. Each is a symbolic representation intended to live on in a permanent way, to celebrate what was both an era and an experience. Like totem poles, they commemorate our shared histories and are a visible construct that the communities in which they are placed can be proud of and hopefully learn from. The Borscht Belt was birthed in the early 19th century when Jews were omitted from many spaces in America. Common signage of the time read Gentiles only, Christians only, Jews not allowed. Other signage spewed no blacks, no Jews, no dogs. A 1919 publication known as the Jewish Farmer's Guide advertised a section called the Jewish Vacation Guide. Hotels, boarding, and rooming houses where Jews are welcome. This guide became a model for the African American community when producing their own guide called the Green Book in 1936. When considering these guides, it's important to recognize the virulent hate that has been perpetuated over time and as a result conceived of destinations of refuge for the Jewish community, but also for the Black, Hispanic, gay, disabled, and other minority communities, all who have faced degrading marginalization. The Jews who immigrated to America after fleeing anti-Semitism, pogroms, and genocide in Europe continued to face anti-Semitism upon their arrival to the United States. They found themselves prevented from housing, employment, educational opportunities, financial opportunities, and more. Anti-Semitism reached its peak during the mid-1920s, just around the dawn of the Borscht Belt. At the time, the Ku Klux Klan membership had reached 4 million, and discriminatory immigration policies were enacted favoring immigrants from Northern and Western Europe over other parts of the world. Out of this exclusion grew a place that was not only a refuge, but a place that was a renaissance. It was a promised land, a safe space that offered acceptance, community, tradition, and leisure. When speaking of the Borscht Belt, all of us, Jews and non-Jews, together are part of this story. All of us made it what it was. Beyond the guests, the resorts, the celebrities, the dignitaries, the glitz and the glamour, there is a rich history of workers and locals, all who shaped the Borscht Belt into the dynamo that she was. We are here to honor a most glorious history. Our fourth marker pays tribute to the town of Fallsburg, which according to the Catskills Institute had about 79 hotels and 107 bungalow colonies. I'm going to call up my friend and partner in this project, Isaac Jeffries, to unveil the marker and read it. Isaac is going to read both sides of the marker for us.
Hello. This is exciting. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the Fallsburg side because that's where we are right now. The story of the tourism industry in Sullivan County, particularly in the town of Fallsburg, is vast and vibrant. Fallsburg was a major hub of the Borscht Belt. This segment of Route 42, known as Hotel Row, led to about 79 hotels and 107 bungalow colonies. One of the first Fallsburg hotels was the Flagler. The Flagler family opened it as a Christian resort in the 1870s, and in 1908 it was sold to Jewish developers who retained the original name for guests to believe it was connected to the luxury hotels built in Florida by oil tycoon Henry Flagler. Flagler's hotels inspired a style of Borscht Belt architecture characterized by stucco, pastel colors, arched windows, and parapets. and later known as Sullivan County Mission style. It was favored at many, many resorts. Other notable area destinations were the Ambassador, which was up the street, El Dorado, which was behind where I'm standing, Olympic, which was also in the vein of this area, the Hotel First, Leibowitz Pine View Hotels, which was up there, and the Phil Bob Day Camp. So we are really standing right now in a true Borscht Belt experience, and if we were going like 50 or 100 years backwards, this entire area would have been saturated to the brim, as we've seen still, lingering around today with hotels. I'm going to read the other side because the other side is also important in relation to why we are here. It's just the general Borscht Belt side, but from the 1920s through the early 1970s, the Borscht Belt was the preeminent summer resort destination for hundreds of thousands of predominantly East Coast American Jews. The exclusion of the Jewish entrepreneurs, or Jewish community from existing establishments in the 1920s drove Jewish entrepreneurs to create over 500 resorts, 50,000 bungalows, and 1,000 rooming houses in Sullivan County and parts of Ulster County. The Borscht Belt provided a sense of community for working and vacationing Jews. The era exerted a strong influence on American culture, particularly in the realm of entertainment, music, and sports. Some of the most well-known and influential people of the 20th century worked and vacationed in the area. Beginning around 1960, the Borscht Belt began a gradual demise due to many factors, including the growth of suburbia, inexpensive airfare, and generational changes. Alrighty, I only stuttered once, so that's a good new record.
You did
for me.
good,
Thank
Isaac.
you all.
You did great, babe.
Alright, the show must go on. We have more people, no?
This window into Jewish history and American history should remind us that hate is a dark force. At this moment, there is a deep pain felt in the Jewish community around the world regarding the horrific events that have taken place, which continue to unfold as we stand here. My message today is one of love, compassion, tolerance, and empathy, but it is also one that desires to elevate Jewish identity and Jewish history, and to combat the hate and the denial of a historic Jewish presence and legitimacy that our community continues to face. My friend Alana, who is a Kurdish, Iraqi, Israeli Jew, said it this morning. The hating and dehumanizing doesn't do us any good, and while there is much room for analysis of the situation, each one of us has a choice in how we behave, and it is a lot harder, unfortunately, to choose to act good. We had thought to cancel this dedication. However, during a time when we are seeing anti-Semitism surging around the globe, with many of us feeling that it's surpassing its prior peaks, we felt it important to come together to celebrate Jewish history and Jewish life. The prejudice the Jewish community is witnessing in the world, online, in academia, and other institutions seems alarmingly normalized. Throughout time, the Jewish people have experienced displacement, intimidation, violence, and genocide. But out of the dark, the Jewish people have emerged and persevered. I have always been proud of my Jewish heritage and astonished at the undoubtable spirit of the Jewish people. I stand here in support of democracy, civility, humanity, and with empathy for every single person suffering unspeakable losses, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, and this includes the innocent people living and trying to flee the Gaza Strip. This project could not be done without Jerry Klinger and the Jewish American Society for Historic Preservation. With Jerry, this project is made possible along with a team that I am so grateful for, and that is Isaac Jeffries, who's with us, Louis Inglaterra, who's tuning in from Colorado, Kelly Huggins, who's tuning in from further up in the Catskills, and Sullivan County historian John Conway, our official co-signer on the markers. Additional thanks to our partners, the Sullivan County Visitors Association, the Sullivan County Historical Society, and the town of Fallsburg. And thank you to everyone here for coming out and making this part of your day, as well as tuning in. I also want to pay a special thank you to Debbie and Gloria Levine, who are here, whose father, Yitz, owns the service station right across from us. Before I invite up our speakers, I'm going to close with a poem written by a poet named Esther Raab. She wrote it in 1967 during the Six-Day War. She was born in 1894 in the land we call Israel and Palestine, which then was occupied by the Ottoman Syrian Empire until 1917, when it came under British rule. Esther's family founded Petah Tikva. It's an agricultural community, and the name of it means the opening of hope. Her words are a reminder that during dark times, hope and peace have been part of our legacy. It's called Mishalot, or wishes. I want beautiful trees, and not wars, and a coat of many colors, and not uniforms, for all my dear ones. I want rain and green furrows, and houses full of babies. I want a calendar of Britot, and a brotherhood plaza, and lightning and thunder in the sky, and bountiful rains on the earth, a pink crocus in the ravines, and pine cones on a scented bed of needles, and bulbul birds rejoicing among leafy orchards, and sails of peace on the Mediterranean. The fall maneuvers white chrysanthemums in the parks, and red balls rolling along the paths, and the sleeves of babies, garments who are signaling tranquility on the clothesline. I'd like to call up the Town of Fallsburg board who is with us today, including Deputy Supervisor Sean Walcarty and Supervisor Kathy Rappaport, to say some words.
Yeah, Maris.
Before we begin, on behalf of the board, we'd like everyone to take a moment of reflection for the events that are going on around the world. We can just all just bow our heads. Thank you. We have to give compliments to Marissa for her hard work. Everybody give Marissa and her team just an incredible hand, her entire team. They have done so much work to make this project possible. On behalf of the board, I want to say thank you for your dedication and your hard work. You've spoken to Hope earlier, and this project is about hope. Us being here is about hope. Everything ties into hope. The hope that we all can be united as a people. And it's a wonderful thing that you're able to do. And we are so glad and so thrilled to be a part of it. Another person that we'd like to thank on behalf of the board who has been behind the scenes from the town is Jen Edwards, who's way in the back over there.
Hey, Jen.
Let's give Jen a hand. I will let you know Jen is going to cause me physical harm later on because I did this. That's okay. But again, Jen has done a tremendous amount of work. We want to say thank you to Jen for all the work that you have put in. Once again, on behalf of the board, Marissa, your team, thank you guys so very much. And we continue to honor the hope that has been laid before us. Thank you.
I'd like to call up Roberta Byron Lockwood, CEO and President of the Sullivan County Visitors
Roberta!
Association.
Thank you, everybody. This has just been an incredible journey you've brought me on. The Visitors Association has had a long storied past of welcoming visitors of everyone. I mean, regardless of your religion, your color, your sexuality, we have always been that location and destination where you're welcome. And we've been in all of those market fronts, sharing and putting out that welcome card to everyone. When Marissa spoke to me of this exciting marker program, we immediately looked to align it with the Dove Trail. A few years back, in honor of the 50th anniversary, we decided to put out a legacy trail of doves that many of you have seen throughout our Sullivan Catskills to represent peace and tranquility and welcoming to our backyard. And to have this, that's sharing that story and making our visitors understand what it took for us to become this great destination, this great vacation area. This is our history, and we embrace this. And we want to make sure that everybody that visits enjoys it, knows our story, and enjoys welcoming our guests here again and again and again. We're looking forward to putting this on our app. We're looking forward to carrying it in our collateral pieces and inviting our visitors and anyone that's interested with our legendary duck trail. Thank you.
Roberta.
I'd like to bring up Sullivan County historian John Conway next.
Gary.
Thank you. First of all, I want to just elaborate on something that Sean said about Marissa and the work that the team has done here. I know firsthand how much work goes into trying to get a marker, a single marker, and to do 20 odd markers, I can't even imagine. So thank you for the perseverance and all of the hard work that goes into it. For those of you who know me, you know I could speak for hours about Sullivan County history and of course the role that the hotels played in that history. But in deference to the weather today, I'll keep it short, maybe half an hour or so. This is a very special place for me. My mother grew up just up the road there. My grandparents lived there. While I was growing up, I spent a lot of time there. Used to drive this stretch quite often. My best friend had a business right next door here, and by the way, it's not Gloria Levine, Gloria Kantrowitz, unless she changed her name recently. So I love this area, and it just happened that the Flagler Hotel, which has been prominently mentioned already today, was probably of all the hotels my favorite one. It's also the place where my mom as a young teenager got her first job. And it just turned out that the Flagler was one of the most prominent hotels in the county, and in many ways probably the most innovative of all the hotels when we look back at our history. But I think if we had to select one area of Sullivan County that more than any other was symbolic of the density of hotels that we had here, this strip known as Hotel Row may be the most appropriate place to focus on. There were other great resort areas. Liberty had a lot of resorts, Parksville, Monticello, town of Mamakating. There were resorts. Livingston Manor had a large number of resorts, but I don't think any place really denotes the impact that hotels had, that this row here, starting from the outskirts of South Fallsburg and continuing on into Woodburn, you just had literally one hotel after another. And back in the heyday of the resorts, what we call our golden age today, that's how it was. There was one hotel after another. And if you've read some of my writings, you know the contributions that the Flagler made to the hotel industry, from architecture. It was the first hotel to introduce mission-style architecture, to entertainment, which the Borscht hotels became known worldwide for. The Flagler pioneered entertainment at the resorts. It was the first hotel to have telephones in the rooms. Many other firsts, and even on the downside of the hotels, it was one of the first major hotels to declare bankruptcy. It was one of the first major hotels to be converted to be repurposed from a hotel to something else when it became the Crystal Run School. But there were other hotels here that made contributions as well. And I'll just mention quickly one of the others, and that's the Ambassador, which was right over here within sight of where we're standing right now. The Ambassador is often overlooked for its main contribution, I think, not just to our history, but to the history of entertainment. The Ambassador, contrary to what you may have heard on national news and probably a lot of other sources, was the place where Jerry Lewis got his start. The Ambassador was one of the nicest hotels in the area, a medium-sized resort that was owned by the Merle family. And the Merle family, like many of the owners of these small and medium-sized resorts in Sullivan County, which were the backbone of our economy for decades, they were pillars of the community. Their kids went to school here. They supported the community in many different ways. They hired managers to run their hotel, and during the 1930s, the managers of the Ambassador were a couple, Charles and Lillian Brown. And Charles and Lillian Brown one summer hired Danny and Ray Lewis as entertainers at the Ambassador. And they brought along their young son, Joey, to accompany them for the summer. And because they were entertainers and were very busy, not just performing, but rehearsing, entertainment at the hotels at that point had become a 24/7 occupation. Joey was very much neglected. And Charlie Brown, who was the manager of the hotel, really felt bad for this young boy, and he took him under his wing and became, in many ways, his surrogate father. And for the rest of Joey's life, Charles and Lillian Brown would be his surrogate parents. And so when they bought their own hotel in 1944, a place called the Black Apple Inn, and renamed it Brown's, he was a prominent part of their entertainment. Not that he ever was actually on the bill there, but he would often come and do impromptu performances, and they used his likeness on the billboards. Anybody who drove on Route 17 throughout the 1960s remembers those billboards with the caricature of Jerry Lewis. Joey Levitch became Jerry Lewis in the 1940s and went on to international acclaim as a performer. But it all started in the 1930s here at the Ambassador Hotel just across the street here. So each hotel back then had its own niche. Many of them are long forgotten today, but that does not take away from the important role that they played during their heyday. So remembering these places is left to these kinds of projects like this marker project. And again, my compliments to Marissa for making this happen, to Jerry Klinger and the Jewish Historic Preservation Association for funding it, and for all of you folks for coming out and supporting it even when the weather's not particularly cooperative like it is today. So thank you all for coming today, and again, Marissa, congratulations on yet another benefit.
Thank you, John. We really could not do this without John, because one of my goals with this project is to be accurate, and John helps us enforce that accuracy. I'd like to invite up Nathan Steingart of Steingart Associates, a fourth-generation family-owned commercial printing company based in Fallsburg that was in operation for over 80 years. Steingart's images grace the markers here. We have an image of the El Dorado Hotel in the 1960s, I believe, 1962, and a building at the Flagler, the main building, in the 1940s. Thanks, Nate.
All right, Nate.
Thank you. So the business, we closed our local location in Fallsburg, but we're still operating. We're over 110 years old, actually, yeah. So I'm 52, and I've been in the business my entire life. And in my childhood, really the hotels were everything in this area. Yeah, if you were a kid, you worked in a hotel, and all of the businesses, most of the towns, and mine included. So, I mean, so many stories of making deliveries and dealing with the different personalities of different hotel owners, and we would print their rates, so they would sneak into the shop and try to see like what the other hotels' rates were going to be for the holidays, and we'd have to keep them out. And it was just amazing to grow up in this area at that time. Everything changes in life, and some things for the better, some things for the not, but the hotels don't exist anymore. When we were closing down our local shop, we had so many things that I didn't even know existed and were happening. We had to clean out our building, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, monetarily, they didn't really have any value, but they were a piece of my history. They were a piece of my great-grandfather's work that he did, and I didn't even know what a lot of it was, because there were pictures of hotels that I didn't know where they were, where they were. So we teamed up with Marissa and Isaac, and Isaac, I know you're in your 20s. I think you're less than half of my age, and I know so little about the hotels. But Isaac, I don't know how he does it, but he would see a picture with no information on it and go, "Oh, that's this hotel or that hotel," and he's such a talented photographer. And working with the two of them was such a pleasure to have a younger generation know the history of this area. I just want to say thank you, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Aw.
And our last speaker I would like to invite up is Marilyn Sultan. Marilyn is the daughter of the former owners of the El Dorado Hotel, Bill and Jean Sevish. Marilyn's brother David is also in attendance with us today, and your daughter as well.
Hello. I'd like to welcome you to the El Dorado. Just right over there. You can see, if you can see through the trees, you can see white buildings. That's where the El Dorado once stood. Also known as the Futuristic Resort and formerly Hotel Zygers. The El Dorado was a mid-sized hotel, which meant a capacity about 350, and I think it was pretty typical of the hotels on this row. And it existed from 1958 to 1967, which is 10 summers, or what we used to call 10 seasons. My family's history in the Catskills began 110 years ago, when my grandparents, Esther and Morris Sevish, bought the Lennox House in White Lake and ran it until 1930. It was there that my father, Phil, decided to pursue the noble profession of hotel man. He became the dining room maitre d' at a lot of well-known resorts: the Flagler, Berkman's, the Homowac, Kutcher's, the Waldmere, the Pioneer, and the Fallsburg. And it was at the Fallsburg that we met my mother Jean in 1947, who was a guest, and she was hoping to match in the Catskills. The owners of the Fallsburg, Ben and Ida Slutsky, told my father about a hotel for sale in Fallsburg. He purchased the El Dorado, which had been Zygers, with brothers Max and Jerry Slutsky. Fittingly, he bought the hotel from the bank in Ellenville that is now the site of the new Borscht Museum. My brother David and I were 8 and 5 when we were driven up the country and saw the El Dorado for the first time on Decoration Day weekend in 1958. I have a vivid memory of driving past a small guardhouse up a winding driveway to see an Olympic-sized swimming pool to the left, and on the right, a stunning new mid-century modern lobby attached to a 1930s era white stucco mission-style main building, which was so beautiful to me. The sun was setting and the lobby was brightly lit, filled with grand opening plants given to us by vendors and suppliers. The lobby was a palette of turquoise, coral, and green with a stunning yellow mosaic fish pond right across from the registration desk, which I always thought of as a wishing well. And the low furniture of the time. My father greeted us in his tuxedo because although he would be dealing with aging plumbing and electrical systems, staff issues, and the demands of Catskill royalty, also known as seasoned guests, what he really loved was booking the entertainment and emceeing the shows. That opening weekend we had Jackie Mason. Malzy Lawrence was our social director and tumblr. He also had a pretty good eye because he hired Rodney Dangerfield very early in his career. And after the show, a guest came up to my father and said, "Hey Phil, who was that, your brother-in-law?" Thinking he was giving him, but anyway, it was a very tough crowd, as you all probably know. So my mother Jean then probably changed into one of her very beautiful cocktail dresses that she bought in Lowe's. I seldom saw her eat in the main dining room. She used that time making up the guest rooms when we were short of chambermaids, retrieving the monkey dishes from under the beds where people had taken a little bit of dessert for later, and commandeering some of the bellhops to help her empty the ashtrays and clear the glasses from the nightclub. Such was the glorious life of the hotel man and woman. Meanwhile, my brother and I enjoyed the idyllic, endless summer of volleyball, swimming, campfires, and blueberry picking. Pretty soon, though, I realized the advantage I had of an all-access pass to the most interesting areas of the hotel. The staff quarters, the back office, watching the blue comics and occasional strippers when I would sneak into the nightclub. Parents were so busy working. Best of all, though, was access to the kitchen. Our rooms were in the kitchen, and so we woke up every morning to the clatter and crashing of silverware, pots and pans, and the yelling of kitchen staff and dining room waiters and busboys, natural enemies. And the smells of coffee and bacon rolls and chicken cooking in every form. The kitchen was the domain of the most important person at the hotel that the guests never got to meet. Norris, the chef, was an African-American man who arrived from Florida every summer with his assistant chef Riggins and our breakfast
every penny. I'm still trying to replicate the flavor of his brisket and matzo ball soup. The other pleasures of having a tea cabinet and hanging out where the busboys slice the homemade rye bread because I collected all of the ends. My role models were the older daughters of my father's partners, Max and Jerry. Susie and Sheila Slutsky taught me important survival skills. How to dance the mambo, how to smoke cigarettes that were stashed strategically around the lobby, and most importantly, how to operate a plug switchboard.
Get it, girl.
It was the birthright of the owner's daughters, and there were 7 of us. At the age of 16, you got to work full-time for $45 a week, which was so much money, but it was so much fun. It was like a computer game. You picked up a phone anywhere on the grounds, and lights flashed and buzzers buzzed. The challenge was to see how fast you could attach the cords to connect the callers, particularly at the busiest hour, which was the hour before dinner, when the guests were coordinating their outfits. It was also a thrill to make the announcements over the loudspeaker, and I'm going to get to do it for the last time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Tick-Tock Lounge in the Jubilee Room is now open for your dancing pleasure to the music of Lee Sevish and his Society Orchestra. Woo! I was working in the office on Labor Day weekend in 1967 when it all came to an end. To quote Pellerin's from Dirty Dancing, we all feel it's slipping away. And that's where I left it for decades, until the internet and books about the era made me nostalgic for this magical time. In 2010, my daughters and I went in search of what was left of the El Dorado. We walked up that now overgrown driveway to the pool that was filled with 40 years worth of silt. The new lobby was half destroyed. It now looked like an open diorama. The ruined lobby, though, still led to the double doors to the nightclub, but that now led to the outdoors, and all that was visible were the cement risers leading to an invisible stage. But I could still imagine where I was, hearing the Shirelles and the Grifters, and listening to those Borscht comics with their Yiddish punchlines that I really couldn't understand, but I knew somehow were funny. The mail and the key slots were still there in what was left of the lobby, and I found the cables that were a piece of paper that was sticking out of the dirt, which had once been the office. I pulled it out, and miraculously I read from an El Dorado brochure, and this is what it said. Once again, it is the time of year when the question is asked, why is this night different from all other nights? It can be different for you too. Celebrate Passover in all its glory with us here at the exciting new El Dorado Hotel. It was from 1959, and it was signed by the Slutsky and Sevish families. Surely a sign from the past to the future. A few years ago, my son-in-law found an El Dorado key, which I put on my keyring and carry around everywhere, and how I wish I could use that key to go to the main building and open up room 21, change into a bathing suit, and dance at the pool arcade to Latin music, and cha-cha. Watch my parents rush from task to task, end the day at the coffee shop with an egg cream and toasted pancake. Of course I can't, but I'm grateful that I once could, and many of you probably have similar experiences to say. I want to end with the slogan of the El Dorado as the futuristic resort. I think it reflected the optimism of 1950s post-war America. And comedians would joke that the indoor pool, when is the indoor pool and the skating ring going to arrive? And they would say, in the future, in the future. Well, that future never came for us, and eventually all the hotels and bungalow colonies on Hotel Row would have the same fate. But more than half a century in the future, here we are. A half century since we served our last Philippines, danced our last foxtrot, and hosted our last rock show. We're still here today. My grandchildren are exactly the same age